First images coming in. Here are the first images of Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping in their bilateral meet. These are images from the bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping from Kazan in Russia. The first time that the two leaders have met in the last 5 years. The last time they met bilaterally in this manner was in Mahabalipuram in 2019, following which the two countries went to a warlike situation in eastern Ladakh. The two shaking hands right now, sitting across a table and talking in this manner now heralds the possibility, just the possibility of a return to normalcy on the border, though that is going to be a long and complicated journey. Remember, India does not trust words, it only trusts action. Trust will not be very much a part of the relationship going forward. It will be about only a convergence of interests, strategic dissuasion, deterrence, and ensuring that India and China are really on the same page. The Indian side, whether it is the diplomatic Foreign Office, the diplomatic corps, the Indian military have ensured that over the last 4.5 years, China has not managed to meet any of its objectives. And especially in the last few months, it has been very, very clear that China needs to come to the table. Remember, this bilateral meeting, Gaurav is still with us, this bilateral meeting was asked for by China, not for the first time, Gaurav. China has repeatedly asked for this bilateral over the last many months, and India has stuck to its ground and said, unless we see demonstrable action and commitments from the Chinese side, there is no question of a bilateral. That's the reason why Xi Jinping didn't attend the G20 last year in India as well. Let's listen into some audio coming in from this meeting.
For both sides to keep to the trend of history and the right direction of our bilateral relations, it's important for both sides to have more communication and cooperation, properly handle our differences and disagreements, and to facilitate each other's pursuit of development aspirations. It's also important for both sides to shoulder our international responsibility, set an example for boosting the strength and unity of the developing countries, and to contribute to promoting multipolarization and democracy in international relations.
我愿同总理先生就两国关系和共同关心的问题交换意见。
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm prepared to exchange views with Your Excellency on our bilateral relationship and issues of mutual interest.
Excellency, आपसे मिलकर खुशी है और जैसा आपने कहा 5 साल के बाद हमारी फॉर्मल मीटिंग हो रही है। हमारा मानना है कि भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है। एक्सेलेंसी, सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए। आज इन सभी विषयों पर बात करने का अवसर मिला है। मुझे विश्वास है कि हम खुले मन से बातचीत करेंगे और हमारी चर्चा कंस्ट्रक्टिव होगी। धन्यवाद।
Big images coming in live from Kazan, Russia. Prime Minister Modi, in his statement, welcomes the occasion of this bilateral, has welcomed the announcement of a resolution between India and China to diffuse tensions in Ladakh, the first bilateral between the two leaders in over 5 years. The last time the two leaders met in a bilateral format of this kind was in Mahabalipuram in late 2019, after which the two countries nearly went to war in eastern Ladakh. A defusing of tensions is now the formula on the table between the two sides. Rahul Kanwal is live with us, our news director. Rahul, very, very important images coming in from Kazan, Russia. The Indian side, which had held off for over a year, despite repeated pleas from the Chinese side for a bilateral between Modi and Xi, has finally agreed to it, and these are those images coming in, and that's only because of some kind of concession from the Chinese side, which we will hopefully get very soon. Important images, Rahul.
Shiv, whenever we speak to any top diplomat about how a particular meeting went, they say, look at the body language. So you and I can spend some time doing that here. Prime Minister Modi, Chinese President Xi Jinping walking out there. In the images, Prime Minister Modi putting his hand out just first. Xi Jinping says, "Thoda wait karo, let's go there at the right photo opportunity." So he has a full sense of where that handshake will take place. And look now at the radiating face of the Prime Minister. He's clearly conveying through that smile that he's pleased with the way the meeting went. He was able to get his point across. Those three things he spoke about: mutual trust, mutual respect, mutual sensitivity. He emphasized that that's what was discussed in that bilateral meeting. The Chinese president is never very expressive, so he comes across as a bit stoic, as he always does. But what we figured out by speaking to our sources, and Gaurav can build on that as he chats, is the role played by Russian President Vladimir Putin in trying to make this thaw happen. Remember, it's also the forum. Prime Minister Modi really did want this photo opportunity to happen in Delhi during the G20 summit. That wasn't to be. Russian President Vladimir Putin acting as a neutral umpire in this fracas between Delhi and Beijing, trying to help bring that mutual wall of distrust down a couple of notches. And that's the role. And like you saw in that chat with Kishore Mehbubani, Shiv, there's a larger game at play. An effort to build up a not anti-Western, but a non-Western block of countries which have certain common interests, and to try and push forward on those common interests. That's a very strong message being sent from Kazan globally. So far, BRICS has always stumbled, and it's been the topic of derision in several Western capitals because of the very different approaches and perspectives of BRICS countries. But if India and China can find a way of working through their differences, that then just potentially takes the areas of cooperation available within the BRICS framework to a much higher level. I see Gaurav is live now with us, Shiv, so you can go straight to him and he'll have much more from the ground, Gaurav. Shiv.
Gaurav, give us a sense of first impressions of this meeting from the ground. It's always very different when you're there amidst all the buzz and chatter leading up to the actual meeting, which has taken place, just a few meters from where you are. Give us your first impressions, Gaurav.
So, Shiv, the devil lies in the detail. It's always a very positive thing when two heads of state, and especially if soldiers have been in an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation, if the heads of state and government meet, it will always mean that perhaps there will be steps that will be taken towards bringing tensions and tempers down a few notches. If that were to happen in the days and weeks ahead, it's a very positive development. But would that only be a tactical gain is the big question, because right now China is also ramping up pressure on the Taiwan front. And as you and Rahul very rightly pointed out, RIC, if RIC, Russia, India, China, were to take off, it would be a very powerful bloc. But you can't have an RIC bloc if China's transgressing Indian territory and, Indian and Chinese soldiers are at each other's throats at the line of actual control, and that too around a 3,500 kilometer long LAC, both in fact at times using Russian equipment. We now have the S-400 system, considered the best air defense missile shield in the world. So do the Chinese. And and you know, it'll be amazing how they identify friend or foe when you use the same Su-30, in India's case MKI. You know, and it's just a very bizarre situation, as the Russian friend was just discussing, that yes, if Russia can play that very crucial role in you know, drumming some sense into China, that confrontation with India is not in China's interest, point one, and point two, peace pays rich dividends, and especially in these times, but there has to be long-term investment in peace and not long-term investment in conflict. If Chinese President Xi Jinping gets that message, and it is very difficult given the way he's been built up all along, he wants to see himself as the emperor.
Gaurav, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment because that press conference has begun. Gaurav is actually going to be there at that press conference putting India Today's questions to the Indian Foreign Office and the Foreign Secretary. So we're going to thank Gaurav for the moment and cut across live to that press conference that is just about to begin. I imagine it's just begun. There you go. Let's cut across.
Language for this briefing is only English and Hindi, so please bear with us. With that, I invite the Foreign Secretary to make his remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Randir. Good afternoon, friends. I have the opportunity to brief you on the Prime Minister's main bilateral engagement today on the sidelines of the 16th Brics Summit. My colleague, Secretary Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs, Mr. Damu Ravi, who is also our Sherpa for BRICS, will make some comments with regard to the BRICS engagements. But let me say a few words about the Prime Minister's meeting with His Excellency President Xi Jinping, the President of the People's Republic of China. We have also put out a press release which should be available very shortly on the website of the Ministry of External Affairs if it is not there already. So as you all know, earlier today, in fact just a short while ago, Prime Minister Modi met with President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the 16th Brics Summit. This was their first proper bilateral meeting at delegation level in nearly 5 years, the last one being on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit in Brasilia in 2019. So let me just flag some points made by the two leaders during their meeting. This meeting happened, as you are all aware, close on the heels of the disengagement and patrolling agreement and the resolution of issues that had arisen in the India-China border areas in 2020. Naturally, the two leaders welcomed the agreement reached between the two sides through sustained dialogue over the last several weeks in diplomatic as well as military channels. Prime Minister Modi underscored the importance of not allowing differences on boundary-related matters to disturb peace and tranquility on our borders. And in this context, the two leaders noted that the special representatives on the India-China boundary question have a critical role to play in the resolution of the boundary question and for the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border areas. Accordingly, they instructed the special representatives to meet at an early date and to continue their efforts in this regard. You may recall that Special Representative of India, Mr. Ajit Doval, who is also the National Security Advisor, and the Special Representative of the People's Republic of China, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, also a member of the Politburo, have met on the sidelines of international events, but they have not had a round of talks in the Special Representatives format since December 2019. So following today's meeting, we hope to schedule the next round of the SR's talks at an appropriate date. The two leaders also reviewed the state of bilateral relations from a strategic and long-term perspective. They were of the view that stable bilateral relations between India and China, the two largest nations on earth, will have a positive impact on regional and global peace and prosperity. And both of them stressed that with maturity and wisdom, and by showing mutual respect for each other's sensitivities, interests, concerns, and aspirations, the two countries can have a peaceful, stable, and beneficial bilateral relationship. As we have maintained during the last 4 years, the restoration of peace and tranquility in the border areas will create space for returning us towards the path of normalization of our bilateral relations. Officials will now take the next steps to discuss enhancing strategic communication and stabilizing bilateral relations by utilizing the relevant official bilateral dialogue mechanisms, including at the level of our respective foreign ministers. The two leaders also briefly reviewed regional and international developments of mutual concern and interest. They agreed to maintain close communication in this regard. Naturally, they also had a very productive exchange on BRICS and the potential for India and China to enhance cooperation on this particular platform. And in closing, Prime Minister Modi also assured India's full support to China's SCO presidency next year in 2025. Let me stop there and request my colleague, our Sherpa for BRICS, to make a few remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. I'll be very brief in the interest of the time. But let me just focus on the Honorable Prime Minister's visit to Kazan for the 16th Brics Summit, which was at the invitation of President Putin. The theme of the Brics Summit, as you all know, that strengthening multilateralism for just global development and security. Today, there have been two sessions in which Prime Minister participated. One is a closed plenary session, and the second one is open plenary session. Open plenary session included also representatives of businesses of all the member countries, as well as the financial institution representatives in the open session. At the end of the open session, the leaders adopted the Kazan Declaration, and the declaration captures the various elements and diverse elements discussed by the leaders during these sessions. It recognizes the reform for the UN and multilateral institutions. In particular, it recognizes the Johannesburg Declaration and reaffirmed the support for member countries' aspiration to be permanent members of the UN Security Council. Cooperation in the financial sector was another element, which also included elements like payment settlements in national currencies. And climate change was another area of interest for all the leaders. There was a lot of views expressed, and also combating terrorism. Prime Minister, in his remarks, clearly brought out the importance of people-centric BRICS cooperation. That was his emphasis, and the fact that the leaders have agreed to finalize list of partner countries in the expanded BRICS membership. It was welcomed. The modalities have also been finalized. So with the expansion of the BRICS, as you all know, that this is the first time that BRICS in an expanded format are meeting. The 9 members currently which have met this time. So you will have an additional partner countries. The list will be out in the net. So what it means to us is also inclusivity, diversity in the BRICS, and brings in the dimension of the global south right in the center of the BRICS discussions and discourse. So development becomes central. Prime Minister's remarks included the importance of global south. He also mentioned about the India's initiatives that have been appreciated within BRICS. For example, the Startup Forum, the skilled workforce, the Research and Development Vaccine Center, digital health, and the digital public infrastructure solutions, which are low-cost solutions for the interest of the countries of the global south. He also touched upon India's own initiatives, for example, the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure, and the Lifestyle for Environment. He urged the members of the BRICS to actively participate in these initiatives. As you know, Brazil is going to take over the chairship next year. Prime Minister wished the Brazilian President Lula all the very best for the success of the Brazilian chairship, and India will fully support in that process. Thank you very much.
We open the floor for questions.
Randeep, just a couple of questions because some of us literally have a plane to catch.
Okay. So Gaurav, please.
Sir, my name is Gaurav Sawant. I work for India Today and Aaj Tak. Sir, my question is, how will this meeting lead to easing of situation along the LAC? Is there need for new confidence building measures? Will there be new confidence building measures? And will soldiers spend the 5th year at the LAC in these freezing winters? The additional 50,000 odd troops on either side.
सर, मैं विशाल पांडे हूं एबीपी न्यूज से। मेरा सवाल ये है कि आज प्रधानमंत्री मोदी और शी जिनपिंग की मुलाकात के बाद क्या ये कहा जा सकता है कि भारत और चीन के बीच रिश्ते अब सामान्य हो गए हैं, और इसी से जुड़ा हुआ कि क्या चीन पर भरोसा किया जा सकता है?
Gaurav, insofar as your question is concerned, it is certainly our expectation that as a result of not only the agreement that was arrived at just a couple of days ago between Indian and Chinese diplomatic and military negotiators, but also as a result of the endorsement of that agreement at the highest leader level possible between the two countries, as happened in the meeting today, where both Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping welcomed the efforts that were made by Indian and Chinese negotiators and the results that were achieved by that. I think these should certainly lead to an easing of the situation along the LAC. Insofar as your question related to confidence building measures is concerned, we have a number of confidence building measures, and these evolve continuously as the two sides engage once again in multiple formats. This is certainly a subject that I think will be under discussion between the two sides. Your last question about whether soldiers will be at the LAC for the 5th year, I would defer this question to our military leadership, because this relates to operational matters, and I think it would be best that we let our military leaders dwell on this particular issue. Vishal, आपका जो सवाल था क्या हमारे जो रिश्ते हैं वो सामान्य की तरफ या सामान्य हो जाएंगे, मैं इतना ही कह सकता हूं कि पिछले 2 दिन में जो कदम हमने उठाए हैं, और ये कदम पिछले 2 दिन से हमारे सामने हैं, लेकिन इन पे जो काम हुआ है वो काफी समय से काम चल रहा है। मैं ये कहूंगा कि इनसे हमारी एक तरह से जो प्रक्रिया है सामान्य रिश्ते बनाने के लिए, उनको वापस एक सामान्य रास्ते पे लाने के लिए वो यात्रा एक तरह से चल पड़ी है। जैसा मैंने अपने जो मैं पहले कह रहा था कि जो ये restoration of peace and tranquility in border areas will create space for returning towards the path of normalization, मैं यही मेरा तात्पर्य इसी चीज की तरफ था कि जो पीछे अभी समझौता हुआ है उससे ये रास्ता अब खुल गया है, रास्ते पे अब चलने की हम दोनों को आवश्यकता है। और जहां तक ट्रस्ट का सवाल है, जो हम दोनों के बीच आगे चल के प्रोसेस होगा, प्रतिक्रिया होगी, उससे ट्रस्ट, हमारी आशा है कि उससे ट्रस्ट बढ़ेगा। हम दोनों के बीच में। धन्यवाद।
Okay, that was the press conference by the Foreign Secretary of India in Kazan, laying down the details of what the formula for peace between the two countries and normalization is going to look like. Very, very important. That first question was from India Today's very own Gaurav Sawant, as you no doubt noticed. Want to play out for you once again the statements by the two leaders in this big bilateral.
Excellency, आपसे मिलकर खुशी है और जैसा आपने कहा 5 साल के बाद हमारी फॉर्मल मीटिंग हो रही है। हमारा मानना है कि भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है। एक्सेलेंसी, सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए। आज इन सभी विषयों पर बात करने का अवसर मिला है। मुझे विश्वास है कि हम खुले मन से बातचीत करेंगे और हमारी चर्चा कंस्ट्रक्टिव होगी। धन्यवाद।
Mr. Prime Minister, it's my great pleasure to meet you in Kazan. It's the first time for us to have a formal meeting in 5 years' time. Both the people in our two countries and the international community are paying great attention to our meeting. China and India are both ancient civilizations, major developing countries, and important members of the global south. We are both at a crucial phase in our respective modernization endeavors. It best serves the fundamental interests of our two countries and two peoples, for both sides to keep to the trend of history and the right direction of our bilateral relations. It's important for both sides to have more communication and cooperation, properly handle our differences and disagreements, and to facilitate each other's pursuit of development aspirations. It's also important for both sides to shoulder our international responsibility, set an example for boosting the strength and unity of the developing countries, and to contribute to promoting multipolarization and democracy in international relations.
我愿同总理先生就两国关系和共同关心的问题交换意见。
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm prepared to exchange views with Your Excellency on our bilateral relationship and issues of mutual interest.
And so that bilateral is done, and now the difficult work of implementing the messages of both those leaders will have to be seen. It's going to be a long journey. It's going to be a difficult journey. Don't expect things to change overnight. But India has drawn a line in the sand. That bilateral has taken place, and we will continue to bring you analysis and reports from Kazan, from Delhi, and from Beijing. Thanks for watching this special broadcast.